To get started, we are going to need a weight 4 yarn. I'm using the Karen Cotton Cakes. This is color Wild Blueberry. It is a weight 4 yarn. I will say it is a little bit of a lighter weight 4, but still weight 4. And the recommended crochet hook is a 5mm. I am going to size up and use a 6mm because I want my stitches to be really nice and flowy and not stiff. So you need weight 4 yarn, 6mm crochet hook, and 1 stitch marker. This pattern is a one size fits most, but it is super customizable. So the beginning chain that we'll make is going to be the size of the neck hole. So I'm going to do a chain of 80 for the neck. So if you want it to be tighter, you could try chaining 70 instead. Or if you want to make it bigger, you can make it even bigger and chain more. It just has to be a number that is divisible by 2. But the chain of 80 is a one size fits most. Because the body is also customizable, you can make it as long, which would also add width, or as short as you would like. So my initial chain is going to be 80, but I'm going to chain 40 first. So I am going to make a slip knot. Put that on my hook and chain 40. So if you are a beginner, I'll show you very quickly just how to chain. So we've got the slip knot on the hook. You're just going to grab the yarn and pull it through the loop on your hook. So that's 1, pull through 2, pull through 3. So you're going to keep going, and I'm going to meet you when I have 40 stitches in my chain. So I just reached my 40th stitch. This is stitch 40. I am going to stick a stitch marker into that stitch because that is exactly half of my full chain. So if you're doing a different size, you'll stick the stitch marker in whatever half of your total chain will be. Alright, so I now have a chain of 80. This is how long my neckline is going to be. If you want to try it on and make sure it fits over your head, I would recommend doing that just to make sure it's comfortable for you. So now I am going to just run my fingers over the entire chain to make sure that it's not twisted, because we are going to attach our chain to make the loop for our head. All right, so I've made sure that it's not twisted up. I'm going to stick my hook into that first stitch that we made in the chain, and I'm going to slip stitch. So to do that, I'm going to grab my working yarn and pull it through both of the loops on my hook. And now we have our head hole. So to get started, I'm going to chain 3, which is going to be our first double crochet. And I'm going to put 2 more double crochets in that same stitch that we just slip stitched into. So to double crochet, I'm going to yarn over, stick my hook into that same stitch, pull up a loop. So we've got 3 loops on the hook. Pull through 2, pull through 2. So again, yarn over, go into that same stitch. You've got 3 loops. Pull through 2, pull through 2. So this is a cluster of 3 double crochets, or a granny stitch. So now we are going to skip the next 2 stitches. So 1, 2. Skip those and go into that 3rd stitch and do another granny cluster. So yarn over, go into the stitch, pull up a loop, and double crochet. Now put 2 more double crochets into that same stitch. Now again, skip 2 stitches. Go into the 3rd stitch with a granny cluster. So 3 double crochets in that next stitch. So I am going to keep going, skipping 2 stitches and making a granny cluster in the 3rd until I get to that stitch marker. So keep going and then meet me back when you get here. So now I have 2 stitches, and that 3rd stitch is where our stitch marker is. So this is the middle of the poncho. So this is going to be our front corner or the front point of the poncho. So you can go ahead and just remove the stitch marker. And in this stitch, we are going to make a corner stitch. So I am going to put 3 double crochets. So because this is a corner stitch, I'm going to chain 2. And I'm going to make 3 more double crochets into that same stitch. So that's our first corner stitch. So I'm just going to keep going with that pattern of skipping 2 stitches and 1 cluster of 3 double crochets in the third stitch. I am going to do that until I get back to where we first started over here. So keep going and then meet me back when you get to the beginning. So I'm getting close to the end here. I'm going to go into that third stitch. And I'm doing a granny cluster. So I'm going to go into that same stitch that we started in. So I'm going to put 3 granny clusters in that stitch. Or 3 double crochets in that stitch to make a granny cluster. Chain 2. And now slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 that we started with. So I'm going to go through the top of the chain 3 and pull my working yarn through, and now we have the back corner. So we've got a corner here and then a corner in the front. And from here on out, the pattern just gets super repetitive, and you really don't need to count much. You just need to count how many rows. So that is going to count as row 1. So I am just going to mark off that I completed 1 row. So to get started on row 2, we're going to chain 3, and this will be our initial double crochet. And now we're going to yarn over and put 2 more double crochets to make a cluster of 3 into that space. So we're not going into a stitch, we're going right into this space. So that is how it should look. So this is half of the back corner. So we are going to go and put a granny cluster in each space along the side of the poncho. So that's 3 double crochets in that next space. And again, we're going into spaces, these empty spaces here between the granny clusters. We're not going into any actual stitches. So I am going to yarn over and go into this next space here. And I'm going to place a granny cluster. And I'm going to keep going, placing granny clusters in each space until I get to this front corner that we made. So I am getting close to that front corner. So I am just putting a granny cluster in that stitch right before the corner. And now I'm going to go into that corner space, and I am going to place a corner stitch. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 more double crochets right into that same space. So we just made another corner stitch directly into that first one. And now I'm just going to keep going and doing granny clusters in all of the spaces along the side. So I am going to keep going and I will meet you back when I get to the end of this half corner that we started. So I just put a granny cluster in this first space right before the half corner. Now I'm going to yarn over and place a granny cluster in that same space as our first granny cluster. So now we have this unfinished corner. Now we're going to chain 2 and slip stitch into that top of the initial chain 3. And we are going to pull our working yarn through to slip stitch. And now we have that back corner finished. So from here on out, the pattern just repeats until you have the length that you would like. So I'm going to chain 3 and do 2 more double crochets in that first corner space. And I'm going to keep going, doing a cluster of double crochets in all of my side spaces, and then corner spaces in my corner spaces. And I'm going to repeat until I've got 35 rows. You can do less rows than that if you want a smaller poncho, or you could do more if you want a longer or a wider poncho. The number of rows that you make doesn't actually matter, but I have found that 35 is kind of in that one size fits most range, but keep on going until it's the length that you want it to be. I am going to do 35 and then I will meet you back here. So I am coming up on the corner where we started this row, and this is my last row. So I am going to place that granny stitch. Now, just like we have on the other corners, I'm going to chain 2, go into that top of the chain 3, and slip stitch. So because this is my final row, I'm going to go ahead and tie off. So I have tied off, and this is how the body of my poncho is looking. So if you like the look of the poncho with just the normal granny stitch edges, you can just be done here, weave in this end and be finished. But I like the look of the tassels, so I am going to go ahead and add some tassels to the border of my poncho. So to make tassels, you are going to need scissors. You can use your crochet hook, and you're going to need something that is about the length of a credit card. So this is just a piece of a cardboard box that I cut to be about the length of a credit card. You could use an old debit or credit card, an old ID, school ID, gift card, something like that. Or you can get creative and use something you've got laying around, like an old cardboard box or something like that. So I am using this. It's about like 3.5-ish inches. So to get started, I am going to grab my card and my yarn. I'm going to set the yarn over the top and hold it at the bottom like this. And I'm going to wrap the yarn around 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now that I've got it wrapped 4 times, I'm going to take my scissors, cut off the working yarn, and keep a hold on the yarn. Slide your scissors underneath and cut. So now you should have this U shape. So I like to start in the tip of the poncho at a corner stitch. So you'll insert your hook, grab the U at the very top like this to keep it in that U shape, and stick the top of that U onto the hook. Then use the hook to pull up the U into that corner stitch. Once you've got a good little loop at the top, take the hook out. So through this loop, you're going to grab these little tendrils down here and pull it through the loop. And now you'll just pull to make it tight. Mess with it a bit until it's as tight as you'd like it to be. And you've got a tassel. So I am going to make a couple more tassels and then I will come back and show you where we're placing them. All right, so I made a couple of these tassels. So I am going to go ahead and put a few more in. So for the corners of my poncho, I like to do a tassel in the top and then also in each side space next to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put the tassels into those spaces. So again, I'm putting my hook through, sticking the top of that U onto the hook, and using the hook to pull it up until I've got a little loop. And then I usually will just kind of wrap the tassel around the hook and then pull it through that way. But if you find it easier to just use your fingers, you can definitely do that. So I'll show you again on this side. So again, I'm going to each side space. I'm going to grab the tassel, put the tip of the U right into the hook, pull it up until we've got a good loop. And then you can either use your fingers or you can wrap it around the hook and pull it through the loop that way. So now that I have the tip of our poncho and then the two side spaces next to it, now I'm going to skip 2 granny stitches between each tassel. If you want a super tassel-y poncho, you can go into each space, or if you want less tassels, you can space them out even more. So I am going to skip 2 granny stitches and then go into that space. So I'm going to add my tassel. Now I'm going to skip 2 granny stitches and then go into that next space and add another tassel. So I'm going to keep doing that all the way around my poncho. And then when I get to the other tip, I'm going to do a tassel in the top and then on either side. So I'm going to keep going and I will meet you back when I am at the end. All right, I just placed these last tassels here on the other side, and I've got both sides done. So now we are completely finished. If you want to block it, now you can go ahead and block it, but if not, you are all done. Thanks for watching.